Welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 9 of season 5. I'm Joshua Buckley, hosting alongside Paul LePage.
Hello.
Producing, we have Alex in New York.
Hey.
Danny Paletti on the socials in Baltimore.
Hey.
Well, that about sums it up, guys. Let's rip off the Band-Aid. It was a 5-3. Wolves ruined our weekend again. Again, probably started with the lineup, if we're being honest. Back three midfield. Lamina, Andre, Gomez. Back four. Forbes came in for Bellegarde, which was exciting. But, Paul, were you a little disappointed that, again, we just didn't make that many changes?
I think there's a certain element of disappointment in that he probably avoided some really tough decisions that now he's facing even more so after the international break. For me, I was fairly okay with it, especially in light maybe of the opposition, but then I just think he got found out tactically, and Frank did a number on him actually, because regardless of Forbes coming in, who did well, certainly for the start of the first half and his contributions, it just seemed like we got picked apart and it stemmed all the way down his side. Now, it's nothing to do with him and his performance. I think they saw some gaps and boy, did they exploit it. Now, could that have been fixed with different players in those positions? Potentially, but I'm still thinking it's indicative of a bigger problem.
Yeah, Forbes looked good, so I guess maybe this cowboy knows what he's talking about a little bit with Stu. Anyways, it definitely turned into a Nathan Collins revenge game fairly quickly. He scored the opening goal on an uncontested header. Tody, I don't know what he was looking for, just completely taking a stroll on the pitch and completely lost Collins. Was that really surprising, Danny, to see that with how good Brentford has been scoring early, or just inexcusable all the way around?
It's just I along with the commentators was counting down the seconds to see if they could do it again in under a minute, and it didn't take them much longer. But yeah, I think I'm joining a bit of a chorus in the fan base of people who are just kind of embarrassed by it. What's going to happen. And also just the way that we set up in those first minutes, it very much felt like it was on the players' minds, and just make sure we don't get scored on in under a minute. But is it really any better to get scored on in 76 seconds instead of 60 seconds?
No.
Especially when, like you said, it's just kind of a schoolboy error, and just how do you let this? It's how tall is Nathan Collins? 6'4"? How do you lose track of him? It was so frustrating.
When have we ever had a central defender make that type of run and contribute in the attacking third? It's unheard of. So
Never.
If you did to that big thing heading into the box, he's got one idea what he's going to do. You pick the man up and you mark him. It's just, I was staggered at how disorganized it was, and the element of that is you can blame the players. You can look at all the different angles. It seems to me there's something inherently wrong in the setup.
By the way, hot take: if we hadn't have sold Nathan Collins, we would probably have given up at least 4 less goals than we have this year. I'm just making that number up, but I do think selling him was a mistake. Tody had an awful game. Lamina had an awful game, and it was really exasperated, Alex, when VAR awarded a penalty after Mario had his arms draped around the player's neck. Was that the right call by VAR here?
Yeah, I think I'm sad to say that it probably was the right call. I just think that whether he went down easily or not, you put yourself in a bad situation when you put your arm around somebody's neck like that, right? It's one thing if you're jostling and your hands are around the hips or whatever it might be, and kind of standard fare. Once you hook a guy around the neck, you're asking for it. And also you have to keep in mind, like, your Wolves. So, there's that element of it as well. So you're never really going to get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to VAR call. Um, that aside, I guess the one thing you could say is at least he was marking somebody, even if he did it in an illegal fashion, because, you can't say that about everybody on the pitch. At least, whether illegal means or not, Mario Lemina was trying in some way to prevent a goal, and I'd rather Nathan Collins not have a brace. Now, to be fair, he's only at like a net zero when it comes to goals, because he had an embarrassing performance when he was absolutely at fault when Wolves blew the doors off of Brentford last year. So he got 2 goals back. He's back to even. Nathan Collins, good for you. But yeah, Lemina's got to go better as the captain there. You're asking for it.
Man, throwing strays all over the place, Alex. You can really say a lot of this, especially in the first half, was on the players. But Gary O'Neill really was making highly questionable moves this week with his substitutions. There was no changes at halftime when, honestly, you could have said Toti and Lemina both needed to come off. The first change was Andre for Hwang. I mean, is there a method to his madness, or was he just throwing crap on a wall and hoping something would stick?
I'd say there was a change at half time, because to me, it certainly looked like it was 3 at the back, and Semedo was that right-sided centre back with Kilman and not Kilman. There's a name for you, with Dawson and Toti. But even then, that still looked like it was a shower of organisation, and no one knew where they're really supposed to be or anything like that. And when you got Lemina popping up as the 10, in effect, what that turned into, then that's the question marks that ring for me in, again, coming back to setup. But for the stinker that Lemina had, and he certainly put his hands up and said so, for him not to get hooked either at half time or early into the second half, and Andre play the whole of that game, fitness permitting. Obviously, he might still be getting up to speed with the EPL and everything. It's just that guy should have been the central of the midfield, regardless of how many attackers or defenders we'd had on for as long as possible, and the changes should have been elsewhere.
I will say it probably was Andre's worst game in a Wolves kit. Still not that bad, especially considering how bad Lemina and Toti were. And the fans were kind of turning on him. Danny, what were the socials saying? I have to ask you, because I had to turn off Twitter Saturday. I was done.
Yeah. God, I hate that you asked me about this. This is like exactly what I thought when that substitution happened. I think, like, if I'm going to be straight about it, like, bringing on an attacker for Andre is not like the craziest choice. I think it makes lots of on paper sense. And I think, well, a lot of the fans might have preferred to see Geddes. I can understand why he might want someone who is maybe a bit better at pressing. But at the same time, I just immediately, as soon as that happened, I was like, this is going to go over terribly on Twitter. And in the ground,
over like a fart in church.
Yeah. And in the ground, as it turned out. And I mean, I think, like, there's a reason for that. I mean, part of it, is just fans being reactionary and being upset with continuing with a player who's clearly out of form. But there's also, like, I don't know, like, maybe don't put him in the firing line again. Like, even if Hwang is, like, his attributes are better suited for that moment, like, I don't know, just why don't we go with something different, even if it's only just to spare him, the like, what is probably like an unfair level of hate for his performances, but, like, not an unfair, like, existence of hate. Like, people are frustrated with very similar results and very similar changes, so let's try something else instead.
Damn you, Jurgen Klinsmann. You ruined him. We do have a bit of breaking news. Breaking news for us right now. if you're watching the YouTube stream. Someone did take the fall for the Wolves' terrible set piece defending, and it was the much ballyhooed set piece coach Jack Wilson who was let go. He had just joined Wolves this season, but clearly it did not work out. So there's no plans to replace him. Alex, does this move the needle at all?
I mean, to a degree, yes. I mean, look, they've been terrible at set pieces. So even if it means that Gary O'Neill himself or another member of the coaching staff has to take on those duties, and so be it. Because, you know, it's kind of like, I feel like set piece coaches have gotten a lot of press recently. And it's funny because I think Liverpool is one of those teams. And then you get Jack Wilson from Liverpool and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, we got a fancy set piece coach now. And what had it really done for this team? I mean, like, also, you know, in a similar vein, like, I don't know how much of it you could really blame on coaching, because I really find it very, very hard to believe that a set piece coach would be saying, hey, don't mark Pinnock, the tallest guy on the field with a draft head. Like, that's definitely not the plan. But whether he is, you know, saying the right things and the players aren't responding or what, like, it is technically in his job description to get a tune out of the players and to follow instruction. And it's clearly not happening. So, you know, I think Wolves can say that they made a change to arguably the weakest part of their game. I mean, they've been god awful at set piece defending. So, okay. And to me, it also kind of feels like an expendable guy who, you know, can fulfill the optics needed by the hungry crowd of vultures who are ready to just absolutely tear everything about Wolves apart. Right. So a little bit of both, I guess, in that way.
It had some parallels as NFL for me. It's like that kicker that misses the game-winning kick.
Right.
Not Kami Fairbairn for the Texans yesterday, I can add. But when they miss it and they immediately get cut and then they bring three guys in to go for that position, that's what it reminded me of. Just like that short-termism, have to make a change because they're forced to. Not really a good look.
And when those three guys come in, they inevitably suck just as bad as the guy who was let go.
Could never be Justin Tucker.
Never Justin.
Yeah.
Never Justin, unless the Super Bowl's on the line.
Yeah. All right. No, a buddy of mine reached out as soon as it happened. He's a person who like stays fairly on top of things, but still like checks in because he knows that I'm like terminally online. And I was like, I don't know. It's like you can't really tell like what the whole point of this is. Everybody's saying he's a sacrificial lamb, but also like our set piece defending has been god awful. But whatever it is, it feels like it just amounts to, it doesn't make me feel any better because like who hired him, whether it was Hobbs or O'Neill who advocated, like, you know, I'm not against having a set piece coach, but it's just like, it doesn't make the fan base feel positive, except maybe we won't like let in so many set piece goals when you just consider like, okay, well, this guy's been in the job for 8 games and now he's gone because we weren't good enough. Like we weren't smart enough to hire someone who could do the right job. That part did not make me feel any better.
Alex, as we talk about all the negatives that have gone on, we had a no stupid question.
Yeah, we did. And it came in from Supergran, who asks on X at WLW Pod. Supergran wants to know, after such a great preseason, which some of us bore witness to in person, how did it unwind just so quickly?
I think the real surprising thing is how they were not properly fit. Because we had that conversation, I remember, Alex, where we were like, oh, yeah, man, they've been training in Florida. These guys are going to be great conditioning, blah, blah, blah. And we haven't seen it. That's the real surprise to me. But as far as what went wrong, it just seemed like he started a lot of guys like Rodrigo Gomez, saw a lot of Pedro Lima. And where are they at now? I don't know. Why take them out when they had such good preseasons?
I think it's twofold in that you never, ever judge your season on how well you do in preseason. That's just you're playing with too much fire. But I don't know whether I'm imagining this, but hasn't he come out at some point and said that the preseason wasn't ideal or
Yeah.
something along those lines, like the preparation wasn't what it needed to be. And this is what irks me a little, in that, again, we're hoping that, okay, he'd get his hands on the squad, his own squad for the preseason, implement his ideas, and he'd be better. Or is he still talking to the fact that he didn't get the right type of player in, and he wanted this switch to a back four, and the preparation wasn't as good as he expected because that's not happened to his liking, be it personnel or whatever. So it's disappointing that with all of that, with having effectively a blank sheet of paper for a pre-season, that this is where we're at right now. And this is, I know I shouldn't be saying it and I shouldn't be looking back, but it gives me the most unnerving feeling that here's how you factor in how last season petered out, that it seems to be one big long stretch, that it's from that season totally falling flat, not winning very many games to close it out, to a not so great preseason behind the scenes potentially, or preparation wise, and then into this one. And it seems like one big picture that it's hard to break it out into sections and really forget about what happened at the end of last year.
So there was one positive, and that's one other guy who was positive on the trip to the U.S., and that was Jurgen Strand-Larsen. Man, a nice goal to equalize at 2-2. I've been super impressed with him, Danny. I'd say easily one of the top 3 players on Wolves this season. Is he the number 9 that we've been missing?
I mean, we all hope so. No, I mean, he's looked really good. I've been impressed. I've been surprised to see him catching some flack through these. I won't say flack, but like saying that like we're not really playing to his strengths, which maybe is fair. But I also just think at this point in the season, I'm still feeling like he's dealing with us having to play against all these top teams. Like, even if we were playing relatively well, he'd be feeding on scraps anyway. So my judgment on him, much like maybe Fosun's on Gary O'Neill, is still sort of waiting for, let's see how he does against those lesser teams where we hope to pick up more points, God willing. But yeah, I've been impressed, even what he's done again in the tougher games. So yeah, I'm happy.
I think it shows exactly what he can do if you put the ball in the right place at the right time. And that's what we've been distinctly lacking. And to Danny's point, has that been a case that those higher quality opponents stop those deliveries coming in the first place? There's an element of that as well. But if he's got that type of service on a regular basis, I think he's going to thrive. But it's how we're able to enact that, and at the same time, it's pointless scoring 2 or 3 goals away from home, but then your backline's letting in 5 or maybe 6, like Chelsea.
I will say, I think what I really like about Strand-Larsen is that he's not afraid to take a shot, even if it's not a good shot. I do feel like that was a weakness for our guys for a couple of years, as they were always looking for just that perfect wide open shot, which rarely comes in this league. Strand-Larsen's just somebody who's going to stick a foot in there and hope get some kind of deflection, which it did. So I've been really impressed. I think he's been one of our best. Hopefully, even if we're in the championship next year, he can still be on the squad. So, guys, let's get to the big topic, and that is Gary O'Neill's job security. So, John Percy, Paul's favorite insider of the Telegraph, he said Wolves remain fully supportive of Gary O'Neill, will give him time to reverse decline, 6 defeats from 7 Premier League matches, so O'Neill may reconsider defensive setup while not writing games off. November fixtures appear to be crucial. No shit, Sherlock. Are they right to not make a change just yet? I got to ask Paul, and then I got to ask Danny, because I think there's going to be 2 different answers. Paul, you go first.
Yes, they are right, but this is distinctly the dreaded vote of confidence. and out of these next games up until that November break, he's got to get a minimum of 2 wins.
I think that's fair, Danny.
Yeah, there's not going to be much disagreement. I agree with that. I mean, like, I personally, I'm probably too much of an optimist and always think someone can turn it around. I'm sure I probably thought Bruno Lage would turn it around well after that one had been cooked.
He's undefeated without a number 9, Danny.
That's right. What could he have done with Jurgen Strand Larson?
Undefeated.
But it's just, you get a sickening feeling when the fans are so unhappy, especially in the ground. It's just like there's like a certain vibe that gets broken where the fans are sort of way less open to the like good performance but losing situation, which I think like we went through this whole beginning of the season with that feeling like it's all right. We've got this terrible fixture list. Let's just get through it. If we can get a few points on the board and just have some good performances, but we lost, that kind of thing. But it's like, as we've had a lot of not so great performances, then you really quickly lose that leniency that you've had. And once you've lost it, it's very hard to get it back. So yeah, I think Paul's right. I think it's like up until the next international break, and it's got to look pretty good up until then.
I think we maybe underestimated how long it is till November once the season starts. That's really what's killing it here. I mean, it is a slog. O'Neill did hint at a possible shape change during the international break. He said, "I've got to look at a change. Things aren't working." Thanks, Captain Obvious. It may be that we have to go to a back 3 using the only 3 fit center backs we have. Boy, that was a shot at Fosun right there. I've got a lot of work on international break. Well, you should have a lot of work anyways. But, I mean, Alex, I kind of feel like, yes, that's what he needed to say. But then it's almost like a built-in excuse right there, too.
Yeah. Look, health, I guess, when your injuries pile up can always be an excuse, and it was an excuse to some degree of last year. It could be both an excuse and a reason, I guess. And here, it feels a bit more like an excuse than, the health of the forward line did at the end of last year. Now, I think it's like weird to, I don't know that it should have taken this, I guess. And I've been like pretty bullish and more on the let's stick with the back 4 than I feel like a lot of people have. So I'll be the first person to admit, I guess it was just a terrible idea. I think I underrated how unprepared our squad was to actually play in this because we had a good preseason. And I really also question, like, if that preseason wasn't in the US, if we would all be as high on it as we were, if we weren't like witnessing some of this in person and the football wasn't just so tasty. And it really was beautiful. But I think it's a little bit of hindsight is 2020, but to not be able to play the matchup and maybe go to that back 5, back 3, whatever you want to call it, against Liverpool, understanding that then that would at least give them a game of that under their belt and then go into a winnable game, maybe being able to play in that same setup. I think maybe looking back on it, again, armed with the results of what has happened, is a little bit foolish because the whole point of being able to be tactically flexible and having players that can play in a number of different positions and having depth at different positions is so that you can approach each game with a slightly different game plan. And if you're going to point at the odds and say what big underdogs that you are, then in a way you're also tipping your hand in that you were signing up for this. Like if you never thought that you can beat Liverpool because the bookmakers say that it's a really hard game to go and try to get a result from, then why wouldn't you play it a little bit more safe and not be so open, So I think he's opened himself up to a lot of criticism by some of the excuse making that he's made, which, to be honest, I've been a little bit surprised by, given last year where I feel like he did everything. Like he always said the right thing last year. And this year it feels like he's just kind of like really scrambling.
Then again, I kind of feel like this happens all the time with our managers after transfer windows.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say one thing about that, though, because I do think like a lot of the attention is on Gary and O'Neill, and rightfully so. But I also know that the fans in the stadium on Saturday were obviously very harsh on Fosun too. And what pains me is I could very much see a world that Gary O'Neill is no longer with Wolves. He's sacked within the next, I don't know, month or two at Wolves because they just have to make a change, and they'd probably be right to do so. But I could also see that not that long after that, he would go on to be a successful manager elsewhere. And that's really frustrating because sometimes it feels like we make the right hire, but we don't allow that hire to come to fruition because of Fosun. And that they cannot escape blame from. Bruno Lage is currently managing Benfica, who's won 2 games in the Champions League. They're 3rd in the league in Portugal. They're probably going to compete for the title there. You look at their roster from top down, they're 11. It's not as good as Wolves.
Wait,
they don't
who's
have
their number 9?
Yeah, and who their number 9 is Pavlidis, baby, who's the 3rd striker on the Greek national team, by the way, and scoring goals left and right in Portugal. And yes, obviously, I'm paying a little bit of attention because Pavlidis is there. Nuno is 10th in the league right now. He's lost 1 match in the EPL to Fulham 1-0. Everything else, by the way, he beat Liverpool. Looks pretty good for him right now. You look at Forest's 11 top down. You think it's as good as Wolves on paper? 3 Brazilian internationals and all these other guys who are going out on the international break. It becomes harder and harder to defend when you look at guys who move on from the club. And West Ham, they're a mess defensively, but they're also sitting at like 12th in the league, and they're probably going to finish in the top half. It bothers me that these guys always go on to have success after Wolves. And to that, there's no defense of Fosun because there's just that to me is like we have the right guy, but we don't have the ambition. So the right guy is just going to go to a club that has ambition, and then he'll go and he'll have a nice career. We're going to be looking back and being that perpetual sacking managers, getting guys in that we could pin this all on. So in a way, I feel for Gary O'Neill. Sorry for the rant, but I just had to say,
love it.
I mean, I just think that like it's heartbreaking because I know he's a good manager and he's going to have a good career, and I really have very little confidence that's going to be at Wolves. I used to have that, but I don't have that now.
Just wait until the meltdown when we hire Greg Berhalter.
Oh my God, please. Is that why you're wearing that shirt? Take that.
No. I got this from Temu, baby. Temu supporting the Chinese. Maybe that'll help us get a center back in the next transfer window. Paul Aitnery had a late goal against Brentford, had an assist on the Larson goal. So if we do go to a back 3, do we really sacrifice that much more in attacking because he'll be playing wing back? And to follow that up, which of the 3 midfielders get dropped?
So first one is attacking wise, I think it actually frees Aitnery up as well, and actually potentially on the opposite side brings in something we might not have seen as well with Gomez as that right wing back who played there last season. So I think attacking intent, there's a lot caught up in playing 4 at the back to have that free extra attacker. I'm not so worried about it. I think it's got to happen. It gives out Nuri license. Semedo may have been brilliant as a right back for Barcelona, but look at the players that he had in front of him. So having him more as a wing back provides more coverage down that right hand side, and the options there increase by the players that he's got on the pitch. And even with that change, you could still play a double pivot of 2 6s and have 3 attackers. Still, you could still have Forbes in that lineup potentially. But when you go to that question, who gets dropped, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a real struggle because the 2 I'd drop would be Lamina and Gomez. And if he goes to a back 5, I'm playing Andre and I'm starting Tommy fucking Doyle for a bit of creativity. He can pick a pass out. He can score from outside the box. That's where you get a bit of bollocks in this team as well and drag him up from the bootstraps.
I was wondering when Tommy Doyle would get brought into this.
It's not Tommy Doyle. It's Tommy fucking Doyle.
Yeah.
I'm on your side, man. I mean, I saw someone point out that, our good run of form last year started when he brought Pablo Sarabia in. And not that I'm advocating for Sarabia to start starting necessarily, but like if we want all this control over a game, we've got two players in Tommy Doyle and Pablo Sarabia who can't seem to get on the field. And that's what they do, is to control a game. So, I mean, first one for me would be Doyle. And then why aren't we using Sarabia for what he can do?
He's got a perfect excuse with this international break as well, that if Lamina, Gomez, Andre all travel, then he can sit them down when they come back and say, look, we play Man City, you've put some miles in, you've had game time, I'm going to use my squad. So it's the perfect opportunity to experiment, and there's no better time if he's got the balls to go ahead and do it.
Yeah. I will push back on something you said, Paul. You said Semedo, really great for Barcelona at right back. He was really bad in a back four with Barcelona. I just remember Alphonso Davies cooking in the.
No, I'm not letting this fly. This is the classic Semedo slander. That was his last game for Barca before he came here. And the only thing people remember is him getting roasted by Alphonso Davies. Like, other people haven't been roasted by Alphonso Davies. Also, the midfielder who's supposed to help him out is Messi, who famously doesn't defend.
Well, Alex, are you on my side, or is it 3-on-1 here?
I think it might be 3-on-1. I won't stand for the Nelson Semedo slander, at least in terms of his defensive capabilities. He's, I think, maybe apart from last week, the least of our problems defensively right now.
By the way, it is funny in FIFA how when somebody moves from Barcelona to Wolves, how they drop plummeting in the rankings. That's always good stuff.
It's ridiculous. I'm going to go on a tangent, just say that Wolves reposted, because they're trying to gin up some good feelings. They reposted that old Adama Traore, Matt Doherty looking at their FIFA ratings. That should have been an actual Premier League scandal, that he had one more physicality than Cody and one better shooting than Cody or something. It was what were they even watching?
Well, they couldn't make him a dominant video game player, but Paul, actually, no, I'm going to ask Alex this one. Does a change at goalkeeper happen too?
Is this because of our group text where I'm just drunkenly at 11 a.m. on a Saturday taking out my anger at Sam Johnstone? Look, it's not Sam Johnstone's fault that the club and, whoever it is at fault, Fosun, Hobbs, Gary O'Neill himself, were very clearly trying to move on from Jose Sa, and just like many other things, couldn't get it done. But it just makes no sense when you have a keeper who, in my mind, is so clearly better than Johnstone, at least in the realm of shot stopping, and your defense sucks and allows a lot of shots, that you continue to put Sam Johnstone out there. And the one thing that was in Johnstone's favor is that he is better at distribution, which he may very well be. But he's had his fair share of mistakes in that department as well, including in this match, which prompted my text when he passed the ball directly back to the opposition in our own half. And look, it happens. And it happened to Jose Sa a lot too. But Jose Sa would make up for it with some otherworldly performances when he would absolutely be getting peppered in goal. I don't know that Johnstone will do it. And also, he cost $10 million or pounds that we could have spent on another player. So again, it's not his fault. He's putting in a great audition tape for a championship team next year, which may or may not be Wolves. I don't actually think it will be. But to me, he just doesn't feel like it. I just can't see a world where Sa to Johnstone is a transition that elevates any Premier League club. I just don't see it.
I think even the extent of Sa not being the most commanding keeper in the air and coming and claiming high balls or anything like that, even that's been wholly exposed by the drop in Johnston's performance when it comes to that as well. And again, getting tactically outthought. What were Brentford doing exactly on Saturday? It was crowding that 6-yard box, putting the pressure on him. That one time where he off motioned to come for it and then came back, that just doesn't instill any confidence on the defenders in front of you. So they probably know they got an issue. They're not got that support from the back because he's probably a little undersized. He's not going to be coming. Even Sa would come, he'd probably screw the occasional 1 or 2 up, which he did, but at least he was getting something on it if it was a punch or a parry away or claiming a high ball. That's just gone totally out the window now with Johnston.
I don't know. You listen to the commentators; they thought Johnston really was one of the Wolves' best players. Eesh, those guys were awful. All right, squeezy bum-o-meter. Where are we at, Alex?
It's going to sound crazy because I feel like I've sounded overly negative, but I'm still at a 6. Like, I still think that they could get a couple of results, and I will caveat that with this. And this is me throwing more strays all around, but it's not really a stray when it's Fosun. I mean, let's be honest, that's who everyone's anger is directed at in some part. We're only 3 points off of 17th, and that's really their goal, you know? So while it may be annoying for us who witnessed a good preseason and thought, hey, maybe we could push for the top 10, or watch the video of Matt Hobbs looking Jurgen in the face and telling him we're pushing for Europe, at the end of the day, our actual aim for the season, which is just to survive, because if you want real glory, you shouldn't support Wolves, is well within our grasp, and actually something that we could actually be well positioned for within like 3 to 4 weeks. So I maintain a 6 on the squeezy bum-o-meter.
Paul, where are you at on the squeezy bum-o-meter?
I think I'm pretty high. I can't remember my fluctuations, but I think I'm at an 8, and that is solely on this this vote of confidence next set of games. But just to that point of like expectations and just wanting to hold on to Premier League status, like how the mighty have fallen when that's the case. And we're kicking around the also-rans like Everton and Ipswich. And if we're in a relegation battle with Crystal Palace, God help us, because we never beat them. Whereas you look at Newcastle, you look at Villa in the Champions League, you look at Manchester United, that how close we've been to them in seasons gone by, the actual opportunity to get a foot in when it comes to the top 6, top 4. They've had opportunities, and this is what it's come to. And you could take your Gary O'Neill's, you could take your Matt Hobbs's even. The whole issue revolving around that decline is on the ownership.
Danny, where are you at?
It's hard to quantify because in some ways I'm more relaxed about it than ever, but mostly out of hopelessness and despair. I feel a lot of the same things that Paul does, but maybe I'll split the difference and say I'm a 7 out of 10. But it's just like, I don't know. It reminds me more of like the coming out of the pandemic under Nuno, where it's just like, couldn't see where a win was coming, and like there was no plan, and like what is even going to happen? Like, not that I hold Gary O'Neill necessarily in the same esteem that I do Nuno, but there was a feeling then of like, well, this probably has run its course, but who do we even get in, and do I trust Fosun to make the right call? I mean, that's my feeling, is that like Alex said, I think Gary O'Neill has at least some future as a head coach. But do I trust Fosun to make the right call, both in when to get rid of him and also who to replace him with? Not really. So, I mean, I guess I'm just hoping that he turns it around, which is truly what I hope. But yeah, it just it doesn't feel great at the moment.
I think Raymond put this perfectly in the comments. He said, I'm at an 8 because these players have forgotten how to defend entirely. Playing the Evertons and Southamptons ain't gonna help what we've seen. By the way, great use of 8. I'm gonna say an 8 because of that exact reason. Giving up 5 to Brentford, guys, that's bad. I mean, I know we've had a run of stuff, but you can't be giving up 5 goals to Brentford. So I'm at an 8. I think they could give up 5 to Man City, and I may actually go down to a 7. Who knows? But yeah, that was not a good performance at all.
No Stupid Questions is presented by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. So whether you're celebrating a Wolves victory or winding down after a day at work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of California's wine country with every sip. For a limited time, Head to esfuerzowines.com and use the promo code WOLVES for a 15% discount on your wine purchases. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their products responsibly and in moderation.
All right, it is time for No Stupid Questions. When our listeners chime in with questions, there's a number of ways you can do so, and our viewers can do so as well. If you're watching right now live on YouTube or Facebook at A Whole Lot of Wolves, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Of course, your No Stupid Questions come in via X at WLWpod, if that's your preferred method. Otherwise, you could email us hello at wholelotofwolves.com. And let's kick this thing off with a No Stupid Question from Brian Donnelly of Charlotte Wolves, who was last week's guest on this show. How will Cunha be looked upon amongst the fan base in 20 years' time? Will he be discussed on the same level as Ruben Neves? Paul.
He scored against the Albion, so I say he deserves a statue.
I was gonna say, and taunted the entire stadium. That puts him in Neves territory.
I was thinking about that when it came through, and I read it today, and it's just, hitting that rich seam of that Nuno team and how everyone came to love Raul. It's like if we'd have had this version of Cunha at the same time, would he have done as much as Raul did, or could they have even played together and everything? That started triggering all of those thoughts and emotions to me. So as it stands, no, just because I can't see us ever hitting those heights again at the moment. It's such doom and gloom out there, but he's got the personality and everything that goes with it, that if it did happen to be a miraculous turnaround and he ended up being that 12-15 goal striker taking us into Europe again, I could easily see it, but right at the moment I can't, I'm afraid.
Another hot take: Cunha is a superior player to Ruben Neves.
I don't know. Danny, you have a counter to that or not?
Josh always doing his best to become the villain of Wolves Twitter. No, I was thinking about this question when I saw it come in, and I feel like just based on sort of like how long he's been here and just generally like how well the team has been doing, which always like kind of affects those thinking, I feel like almost just like kind of like a very well-liked figure the way that Saiss was. But then, like Paul said, that goal against the Albion, like that and the celebration easily puts you into one or two echelons above that. So it's like, if he had not scored that goal, maybe like if we didn't draw West Brom in the Cup, and then like he had a decent season, then moved on last summer, I think again, like people would like him a lot kind of in that Romain Saiss way, where it's like you always see him on the international stage where you're like, I like that guy. But the goal against the Albion just, it puts it up there. And I mean, he's become such a big part of not just the dressing room, but also like all of the online media that they do. So, I mean, he's almost the face of the club at this point.
I agree. Face of the club.
Yeah.
Ain't going to get us the Champions League.
Okay, let's move on to a question from our buddy Steve Young, who said it took Josh rubbing lemons on his skin, salt and lemons, of course, for the goals to arrive. What's it going to take for a clean sheet? All right, come on, work your.
So I will say, when this came in, I started doing some research, and I may or may not have a short segment next week, assuming Amazon comes through on the delivery in time.
All right. Will your clothes?
I don't know if it'll work, but we're gonna try it. We're gonna try it live on this stream next week. Be sure to tune in.
All right. I guess that's a big TBD for Steve. Tune in next week to figure out.
It's not as fun.
To maybe see Josh rub something on his skin.
Yeah, I won't be rubbing anything on my skin, and no, Chris Fisher, I will not be getting a Brazilian wax. So go fuck yourself.
No. Yeah. If you were, I would prefer that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I would just prefer that it wasn't done on a live stream.
That was not what Paul imagined when he started this podcast and said, one day, 5 years later, my co-host is going to be getting a Brazilian wax. No,
I don't think you're right about that.
but I have done some research, so we'll see. We'll see.
If it's well researched, then it works. Let's roll with it. Let's get to a question from Todd DeWitt, Minnesota Wolves, who and on the screen you can see a picture very briefly of the Doritos Wolves kit, which is excellent. And he asks, I found this gem in a local shop this weekend, about passed out when I saw the price tag was $200, which you can actually see in the image on our YouTube stream there. Is there a Wolves kit that you would be willing to pay top dollar for? So I guess if we're saying 200, let's just keep it at that. Is there a Wolves kit you would pay 200 secondhand, probably worn by who? We don't know. Maybe smells for.
Not 200. And where the hell was Todd shopping that he saw a Wolves kit for $200?
I know, that's a weird one, right?
I want to know the story of that jersey.
Yeah,
I really do.
we're massive, is what you're saying.
Oh, it probably smells of cigarettes and sadness. However, if I was gonna spend more than normal on a kit, Paul, you will be very surprised by this. I would take the 2017-18 Wolves away kit from the championship with the money shop, the black with the gold stripe going on it. Reason being, I love that kit, and that's one of the reasons I chose Wolves as my team, is because I thought it was pretty cool on FIFA. So there you go.
I don't know that there's one that I would pay $200 for. And for our British listeners, that's, I think, about 150 pounds. It's pretty dear. Although the Doritos one is up there, I would say. I mean, it's a good looking kit, and it's one of those that has aged well. You know, I know that it wasn't necessarily as well looked upon in its time, but what we wouldn't give for a bit of Doritos sponsorship instead of AstroPay or Debet or whatever.
Another hot take. A Doritos kit would be a hot seller in the US.
Yeah, that I believe for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I believe that. No, I cannot think of one unless there was some sort of memorabilia attached, if there was like a signature on it or something. But if it's just something that I'm finding in a consignment shop, $200 is a little difficult.
Paul, you've played quite an emotional toll on Wolves in your life, but how about in terms of dollars? What's the most you paid in terms of actual money on any Wolves apparel, let's say?
I've not spent a huge amount. I've never been a collector for anything, or got that jersey and then kept it unopened or anything. I'm just kicking myself because really from the age of like 12 onwards, it was pretty unheard of not to have at least one jersey a year. And I'm just thinking now, if I'd have kept even half of those, like the collection you'd have, or even when they put those blankets together and they stitch them all up and they've got them all on one, that'll look really cool for some of the old ones. But I'm thinking back now when it would have been around 98 and we had Puma for the first time, and it was around Robbie Keane's breakout season, and they were the first long sleeve jerseys I bought. I had the gold one and I had the white one, and they were quality. The difference between the last set of Puma jerseys we had on those were like night and day. These original ones were proper, really, really quality pieces of merch. So I have to kick myself that I've not got those kicking around still.
I will say Todd also has another one of my favorite kits, that one that has the wolf head into the design.
Yes.
That's a sharp one.
Yeah.
I remember coveting the 1920 the the black one, not 1920, not 1900.
That'd be worth some money.
Yeah.
But 2019, 2021, the black away, which I had, but in the preseason when we played in China, they couldn't use the Man Bed X logo, so they
had the
used
Fosun.
Fosun. And at the time, I mean, it looked more clean because it was gold instead of the awful Man Bed X, like black and weird white symbol. But nowadays, I don't know that I covet a shirt that says Fosun on it anymore.
Oh, man. 5 years younger Danny, filled with so much hope. Ready to rock that on your chest. All right. Thanks to everybody who chimed in with your no stupid questions. And thanks to our friends at Esfuerzo Wines. As you see, if you're streaming live, or as you hear us say many weeks, esfuerzowines.com. Use the promo code WOLVES, and that would mean that you would get a 15% discount on your order.
And that brings us to a close for this week. We're going to be back a little later next week as we preview the home fixture of, it's only Man City coming to the Molineux. What's the worst that can happen? So thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex producing, and you, who's part of our audience. Without you, this stream and the podcast wouldn't be a thing. So continued thanks. If you've not yet to do so, please like and subscribe our content on YouTube. That helps with our exposure. And as you walk in through your towns and cities this week, you'll still be wearing that brown paper bag, but you can just lift it up just a little and say to that stranger, "Up the mighty Wolves."